Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the August 1st meeting of the San Carlos City Planning Commission. So, will you please join me, rise, and we'll pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. So our first piece of business is roll call. Andrea?
Commissioner Garvey?
Present.
Commissioner Roof?
Present.
Vice Chair Clemens?
Present.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Present. Thank you. At this point in our agenda, we have the opportunity for public comment. The purpose of this is for any members of the public that would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda. If you have something you want to speak, please fill out a speaker card and bring it forward. And we're happy to entertain any public comment at this time. And for anyone who's not here in the room, hopefully you are joining us by Zoom webinar, or if not, you can be dialing in at 1-669-900-9128 and be entering the meeting ID 886-3546-7349. Lynette, are there any callers on the line?
Yes, we have one.
Very good. Hello, caller. Could you?
Yeah, Daniel, you are now unmuted, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Y'all can hear me? Check, check. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you, Daniel.
Okay.
And this is with regard to an item not on tonight's agenda?
Yeah.
Great. Please go ahead.
Hi guys, my name's Daniel and I throw concerts under Vecino Lemonade, and I'm here to talk to you guys about figuring out a way that I can continue to have backyard shows. A couple months ago I got hit with a cease and desist from my backyard shows because they were deemed special events. These backyard shows mean so much to me and the small but growing music and creative community here in San Carlos and the greater Silicon Valley. Kids like me have not had an all-ages drug and alcohol-free music scene ever, and it's something that we really, really just love, and it's so nice to see. It's so awesome for me to put on events for my friends, to play their music and just make new friends and just build this creative community. With the cease and desist, it claimed my concerts for special events. So the two options you're looking at was either get a temporary use permit, which we ruled out because it cost too much, or throw a nonprofit fundraising event. So my friend has a nonprofit, and I sent a request to the proposals for the city to throw a nonprofit fundraising concert, but that was deemed a special event, which frankly I think is ridiculous because SCEF will do similar events where they'll play music and they can have these fundraisers in their backyard. It's all ages, drug and alcohol free, and it ends at 10. And I know that these ring so much more positive to the community than they do negative. And I know that there's been some complaints. And from John Dugan, I've heard that most of the complaints came from people seeing flyers in the neighborhood, which frankly I think is ridiculous. So they simply saw flyers at the event and didn't come to check it out themselves. I really hope you guys can work with me to find a way to continue to have these events because it means so much to me and a lot of kids in the area. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments, Daniel. And I think we've had the opportunity in the past to have you join us. I think this is an item that's really best left with staff for how to best guide you in how to approach the city for your question.
Thank you, Chair Iacopone. Andrea Martisich, Principal Planner. This item was discussed previously at a council meeting, and direction was given to staff to provide space at Burton Park for an event which I know has occurred there. And this is something that, we can discuss further with Daniel and bring back an update if you would like. And yeah, that's the update on that.
Thank you. I know that Daniel and his colleagues have been advocating for this opportunity, and it's always good to hear how we can work with private citizen groups here to enrich San Carlos. So thanks for taking that on.
We have another attendee, Skylar.
Hello, Skylar. You have 2 minutes, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually just calling about the same thing. I wanted to support Daniel. I'm a local musician and drag king, and this is a really important thing that I think he's doing. There's really not that many places in the Bay Area for trans and queer people to go and feel safe and validated, and this is like a really important space for a lot of us to have. So if you need to hear another opinion or another side of that, the queer and trans youth in the Bay Area could really use a space like this. So I guess that's all my commentary.
Thank you, Skylar. Appreciate your comments.
That's it. We don't have any more callers.
Okay, thank you. We have one person here in the audience that would like to make a public comment.
Hi, Karen Molinari, resident of San Carlos.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
Good, and I just feel motivated to speak after these two students have spoke because I attended that concert in Burton Park, and it was amazing. As a parent of teens in town who are looking for something fun to do, I think it was a great opportunity. As somebody who grew up here and there were lots of places for us to hang out as young kids, it saddens me that that doesn't exist currently. So I just encourage you to continue, and I really have to say I appreciate Parks and Rec staff letting Daniel have the concert at Burton Park, but I would encourage us to think that there's other ways we can support our youth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Lynette, anyone else on the line?
There is no more.
Okay, thank you very much. I think our next item is approval for minutes. We have two sets of minutes needing approval tonight. One is for the special meeting, joint meeting between the RDRC and the Planning Commission on June 6, 2022. And second is the approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission from June 20th. And let me just check with staff. Can we take a motion and approve both together?
Yes.
Very good. So first, let me check. Are there any comments from my colleagues?
Actually, I'm going to abstain from one because I wasn't there. So maybe you can't.
Okay, well, let's do them separately. So are there any comments regarding the Joint Planning Commission and RDRC minutes from the meeting on June 6th? Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Approve.
Chair, I will move that we approve the minutes from the Planning Commission and RDRC joint special meeting of June 6th.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Abstain because I was not present.
Vice Chair Clements?
Approve.
And Chair Iacopone?
So I was not there either. I've read the minutes. They seemed to read clearly. I can't speak to their content.
If I could share, I've seen it handled both ways, whether you can choose to approve or choose to abstain if you were not there. Either way, up to you. If not, we could entertain
Thank you. I
again.
just want to hear from council and staff.
Killing time.
Even though you guys were not present, you can approve the minutes. We do need a majority to approve them, so we would recommend that one of you do take a look at the minutes and approve if possible.
Then I will approve.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And now for the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting on June 20th, 2022. Are there any comments? I have none. No?
I move that the Planning Commission approve the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting on June 20, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Great. Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing. Andrea, could you actually go back one, I think? Great, that's okay. Thank you very much. So the procedure for a public hearing, staff will present a report on the history, physical features, et cetera, on the application followed with staff recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation, and therefore interested members of the community may speak out regarding the proposal. When all interested parties have had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The Commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else has raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. We'll have two methods of having speakers in tonight. I have a number of cards so that those of you here in the room would like to indicated you'd like to speak, and we'll also, of course, entertain people online. If you haven't yet and you want to fill out a form, there should be a speaker form over there on the back, and if you'd please fill it out and bring it over to staff. And when we get to that point, and I'll call on people in the order received. Tonight's item is address 1021 Howard, APN 046-191-070-080 and 020. Request for design review, transportation demand management plan, and grading and dirt hauling certificate for the development of a new 190,027 square foot research and development life science building. And with that, staff, you have a presentation.
Thank you. Lisa Costa-Sanders, Principal Planner. I would like to introduce Shannon Allen, Consulting Principal Planner. She'll be giving the staff report, can answer the Commission's questions. And then the applicant is here this evening, and they have a presentation they would like to give to you as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Hi, Shannon.
Hello. Good evening, Commissioners. Next slide, please. The subject site consists of 3 lots totaling 2.19 acres that currently contains 3 single-story buildings and the associated surface parking. The buildings are used for office, industrial, and research and development. The site is located within the General Commercial Industrial Zoning District and General Plan land use designations. The project vicinity includes a similar mix of uses, as well as the Lucky's grocery store located north from the site across Howard Avenue. Next slide. The site is 1 parcel to the north of the Industrial Arts District and a few blocks south of the East Side Innovation District. And the applicant will speak tonight on how this project took the visions for those 2 areas into consideration. Next slide. The applicant proposes to construct a new approximately 190,000 square foot research and development life science building with 3 floors plus 2 levels of subsurface parking. Next slide, please. This is a view of the building east along Howard Avenue. The proposed design is similar to the research and development project recently approved at 1091 Industrial Road, approximately a half-mile northeast of this project site. The owner and architect teams are the same for this project. Large glass windows are utilized throughout the proposed building for modern design, as well as to minimize bulk and mass. The building facades along Howard and Bayport Avenue feature limestone, metal, and wood finishes selected to respond to the history and character of industrial uses in the area. Next slide. And here's another view of the building. This is the front area facing along Bayport Avenue. And next slide. The building is organized around an approximately 13,000 square foot publicly accessible plaza that includes a drop-off area, courtyard, and lobby areas as one nears the main building entrance. The courtyard entrance includes seating areas in both hardscape and landscape. In addition to the research and development use, the first floor would include an approximately 1,000 square foot cafe and an approximately 3,500 square foot retail space. The cafe and adjacent outdoor area terrace anchors the entry plaza, and the retail space would open directly onto the courtyard. Next slide, please. Planning Commission approval is required when grading exceeds 1,000 cubic yards. The site grading consists of 93,400 cubic yards of soil as a result of 2 levels of subsurface parking. This translates to 3,300 truckloads, with off-hauling occurring over a 60-day period. And the grading operations will follow the recommendations of the geotechnical report. The haul routes are listed on this slide and have been reviewed by Public Works. Next slide, please. The project also requires approval of a TDM plan. The applicant's TDM plan was prepared by Hexagon Transportation Consultants and peer-reviewed by city staff. It anticipates that at least 20% reduction in the trips based on marketing and management strategies, on-site amenities such as the showers and bicycle parking, incentive programs, and other measures that are listed on this slide. Next slide, please. The project qualifies for categorical exemption under the CEQA guidelines, section 15332, for infill development projects. The project is consistent with applicable general plan policies and zoning, occurs within the San Carlos city limits on a site less than 5 acres. It would not result in any significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality, and the site can be served by utilities and public services. In addition, neither the project nor the site meet the requirements or meet any of the exceptions to the exemptions, which is described in CEQA guidelines section 15300.2. Next slide, please. The hearing tonight has been properly noticed. The public notice was mailed to all property owners and occupants within 300 feet of the site on July 19th and was published in the newspaper on July 21st. And staff has not received any additional comments on the project. And the last slide here provides, if the Commission so determines, suggested language for the motion of approval. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Shannon. Maybe before we move to the applicant's presentation, are there any specific questions for staff before we hear further?
I have a clarifying question. The picture of Howard Avenue showed a center median with plantings on it. Does that exist, or is that something that would be built in conjunction with this?
It is not part of the proposed project, and it does not exist. I can sort of an artistic license of the renderings. So really, it's important to focus on the building themselves and the facades.
Could you briefly show that I think it was the second slide in your presentation of the location of this relative to the East Side Innovation District? Yes, so we're quite separate from the East Side Innovation District. Yeah.
Yep, but it is, there's a small parcel to the south, so that separates it from the Industrial Arts District. But yes, it's 3 long blocks to the East Side Innovation District
Thank
area.
you. That's all I went by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take another look. That's all I have.
Yes, thank you, Chair Iacopone. 2 questions. Both of them are on the Climate Mitigation and Adaptation Plan. They're both on page 2 of that plan. One is strategy number 6, solar power. Does the project include a photovoltaic solar system as required by the city's REACH code? They've checked no. Can you help me understand what the city's requirements are for solar panel and what the applicant's responsibilities are for solar panel?
I can, and you can see that form was developed in February, March, April, May, June. So it's a new form, which I think is great for helping the city staff track how the climate action plan is being implemented. Although there may be some kinks in that form versus the online form that helps clarify. But they are subject to rooftop solar, and the negotiation that would happen at the building permit phase would be around what could be provided given the volume of HVAC systems that are required for a biotech type of use.
All right,
They
thanks.
might not fully meet it, but there's...
Might not fully meet it, but they will do it, and you'll figure out a balance. Okay, thank you. Second question, maybe the same way. Strategy number 18. Does the project comply with the city's EV charging requirements in the REACH code? It says no. Can you help me understand that better?
Yes, that should say yes.
I thought
And the applicant can speak to the number of EV charging stations that are required, but that is not an area of negotiation, and the code does spell out the requirements based on like a percentage
Parking,
shall be
yeah.
X% EV
Okay.
with a certain number of parking spaces.
Great, thank you. Very helpful. That's it. Thank you, Chair Iacopone.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. Commissioner Clements?
Thank you, Chair. I had 2 questions. The staff memo says, as a condition of approval, the developer is going to be required to plant 3 additional trees or pay an in lieu fee. Is that choice made at the time you pull building permits?
It would be, and it's, they are required to have 36 trees. Their landscaping plan right now shows 33, I believe. And as utilities are finalized, we've seen the experience where sometimes maybe a tree can't be provided based on a utility or a site distance. So as they develop their building permit application, it should be fine-tuned at that time.
Right. And is it at the developer's discretion to select an in lieu fee or the 3 additional trees?
I would say that there will be a discussion, and usually the discussion is show us really how you cannot, like the first choice is to provide those trees, but if there is a physical reason why trees can't be provided, such as utilities or site distances from the driveway, then there would be some conversations.
And through the chair, if I could just clarify, so the recently adopted tree ordinance that you all were a part of does allow the tree in lieu fee, but only upon the discretion of staff and the arborist. So that would be, like Shannon said, looking at what's feasible, what's possible. But the developer cannot opt to do that as a choice.
Thank you for reminding me. I thought that sounded familiar. Second quick question is, there is a cafe on the ground floor. Is that only going to be for the occupants of the building, or is that to be determined still? Could that possibly be available to the public?
It is currently proposed to be available to the public.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you. One additional question. I appreciated all the drought-tolerant landscaping that's proposed. The renderings look beautiful. My question is about rainwater and water in general. Is there any city requirement that large developments like this capture rainwater, store rainwater, use rainwater to the extent that they can? I didn't see anything in the packet, but I didn't really know what the water requirements were.
So there is not a requirement at this time. It's my understanding for projects that require planned development, there may be negotiations with the city, and certainly in areas like the East Side Innovation District, where there's purple pipes and vision statements around recycled water, that those are conversations that are happening throughout the city. But for a project of this scale in this area, it is not a requirement.
All right. Thank you for that. And Chair Iacopone, is this a good time for questions on the Transportation Demand Management Plan, or would you rather take those later?
I think it would be great to hear from the applicant, but if it's a question of policy or clarity around code or something, then maybe now would be a good time. So I'll let you make the call.
I think I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you, Shannon. Would the applicants like to come on up and make the presentation? Great, and please state your name so that we have it for the record.
Mike Hallow. I'm the project developer with Prince Street.
Hello, Mike.
Hi, good to be back. So last time we were here was actually March 2nd, 2020. So it was the last hearing before the shelter in place. So happy to be back. Thanks for having us. Thanks for your service. Thanks everyone that came. So my name is Mike. I am the owner of Premia Capital, co-developer of the project. This is my 20th year in the business, believe it or not, and just a little bit of context about our company and how we looked at this project, how we look at all our projects, and I'll pass it along to Rob. So I started Premia Capital in 2009. We've always been a small company. For a long time, we've actually been based here in San Carlos. We're in downtown Redwood City now. And we started off buying small commercial properties. Oh, sure. I'm just going to speak. And so we started off doing, yeah, we can leave it there for a while. It was great. Doing small commercial properties, interior work, leasing to creative tech and life science. And in 2013, we were fortunate enough to buy a property in downtown Redwood City that had an excess surface parking area. We ended up participating in the downtown Redwood City gatekeeper process. And so that was our first commercial development at 75,000 feet. Going through that process, start to finish, I realized just how many brilliant people, how many people have to come together, cooperate, and that's designers, engineers, city leadership, workers in the field, and just these development projects. To me, you know, if you're a smaller company, they take a few years each. You're super fortunate to do 3 or 4 in a decade. And so for us, we take these projects obviously very seriously, and they just have to be as perfect as we can make them before we even go out to the community at all. And so we spent with 1021 Howard months just on the design to get it to a point where we feel passionate about the project, and with a straight face we can go out to the community, we can go to you and say we believe in this project, we want it to be beautiful. And so if we do the next slide. Oh, thank you. So 1021 Howard, like our other projects, there's a basic through line, and we think that all of these projects, you have to look at it first from the community perspective. For the most part, the community's not up on the 3rd floor on a daily basis. They're looking at the project from the street level. And so we want our projects to feel warm, inviting. This project in particular, we have 10,000 feet roughly of this open space. The cafe is open to the public. There's outdoor space that has a beautiful design. And then we actually have maker space in the back of the property on the street level. So the idea is if you're walking by or you come to learn about the project, that you feel welcome, that you feel invited, and that it's energized from the street. And all of our, like all of our other projects shown here, 1180 Main, which is in Redwood City, 550 Allerton, all of our parking is subterranean. So when you're on the street, you're not looking at, you know, no one goes to Italy, comes back and says, I saw the most beautiful above grade parking garage. And so we want that experience for people to be good. And then all of our projects, we play completely by the rules. And so we take whatever the existing zoning, the height, the density, and we play within those confines. And just a quick second about our community stuff. So we're a big believer that the business community can play a big part in solving problems in our communities. And one of our biggest areas of focus is kids, disadvantaged youth. Through PAL, we fund 22 sports teams year-round. And as a dad, I have 4 kids in my house, somehow, some way, and as a coach year-round, you're just always looking with kids. You're always looking to find what is going to spark their interest. And with this project, with 1021 Howard, when we spent a lot of time with the Yaba, because we're a couple properties over from the boundary. Wanted to hear from all these smaller business owners that own pipe fitting, auto repair, stone. These are true craftsmen in this area. And what do they care about? What are their issues? They care about protecting that trade area. And one of the biggest issues that we've heard about for years and years is losing skilled labor. This keeps pushing south, east, and we just lose people. And so we just started to talk to people. And I mean, obviously there's a big issue because people move, it's worse for them. They don't get to be around their friends and family, and if they're from the Bay Area. It's harder for those of us that are still here, lose services, harder to hire. We deal with it as developers. And then, at the same time, we have this other problem, which is everyone's starting to realize that college isn't for everybody, and that you can have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, history degree, liberal arts degree, and not be in a better position. And the trades are a big opportunity for kids that want to work with their hands. They want to do something more real. And you can go out and make $100,000, maybe start your own business. You can make a couple $100,000, whether that's carpentry. So it's a huge opportunity to pair those two problems. And so we started talking to people, and we ended up deciding, we won't go through all these unless you want to, but we ended up deciding to dedicate $1.5 million to Redwood School, which is at the border of Redwood City and San Carlos. This is a school that's mostly focused on craftsmanship, culinary, actually making and doing things. And they have a big shop and a big yard, and they've got personnel. And so they need money to grow their program, to grow their curriculum. And so we decided, to the extent this project becomes approved, to dedicate those monies to Redwood School to help grow the trades here. So that's our community approach. And with that, we'd love to turn it over to Rob Zirkle, our project architect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Just want to echo what Mike said. This was my last in-person hearing before the pandemic, and this is my first in-person hearing, I'm going to say, after the pandemic, knocking on wood. It feels phenomenal to be here. I want to be respectful of time. I've got probably 6 or 7 minutes of slides, which I can move faster on if we need to.
Take the time that you need. 6 minutes would be fine.
Okay, great, thanks. It's always inspiring and a little humbling to speak after Mike. He does it with lots of passion and heart, so it's not easy to follow, but I'll try. We've seen a version of this slide before. It is a very interesting architectural opportunity, I think, and urban opportunity to be sited where this is between the East Side Innovation Zone and the Industrial Arts District. Two kind of different grains, different typologies, and so we want to create an architectural proposition that deals with both of those. At the same time, we're also a good location to transit. It's only 20 minutes by foot from the Caltrain station, 5-minute bike. There's ample bus opportunity nearby. So this is actually a good site related to transit, particularly what we're used to in the Bay Area. So we want to take advantage of that, welcome in bikes especially into the project, but recognize that a TDM approach is also great here as well. I think this slide really sums up the interesting kind of features of this. If you look at the buildings on the left, of which you are all familiar, big buildings, some campus scale developments, lots of PD discussions in the Eastside Innovation District for large projects. And then on the right, in the industrial arts area, it's small grain, it's fine grain, it's craftsmen, like Mike said, it's small businesses, and it's just kind of a cool mashup of businesses too. And so we want to honor sort of both sides of our site with opportunities to grow companies and grow businesses. The basic approach to the site plan is diagrammed here, where instead of one large building, we want this to really be a pair of, let's say, medium-sized buildings that have the connective tissue to function in, let's say, a single-user opportunity, but also have a lot of light, natural light in the spaces that can be multi-tenanted for small spaces as well. It's organized by a publicly accessible at-grade common space. As Mike said, it's about 10,000 feet. And I don't know if I point a laser here, it will register with you, but if you can imagine, there is a cafe right on Bayport, and then at the back of that 10,000 foot space, there are 2 maker spaces. So the idea is that this is programmed with freely accessible public spaces to help give some life and energy to that open space, and also be an amenity for the people who work in the building. In addition to the parking being below grade, we're getting all the servicing as far away from the corner as possible. We have a sort of a fun moment with bikes for the short-term outdoor bicycle parking, where it's up on our elevated first floor, which we're using for sea level resiliency. So we're calling it the bike patio. So there's 60 bike spaces out there that are off the ground and protected, but visible on Howard. It's an important connector street. And I think that the architecture is framed to be super flexible. So we've designed this to be able to host a life science company or companies. So we're dealing with all of the sort of state-of-the-art planning modules around R&D benchtop. So we're very rigorous about the parking grids. We're very rigorous about the depths of the building so that it works well for labs, it works well for office, it works well for both. You'll see that we have a diagram here of how this is all populated. The building fits this perfectly. This is one example of how flexible this building is as we head into maybe a little bit of an unknown in the marketplace, but also dealing with the present reality that life science is still a driver of this region right now. You could look at this floor plan and say, that looks like one company on one floor. It can be that, but it's also really set up with 2 separate lobbies accessible from that open space, 2 building cores, and a skin to core depth from the exterior envelope, where it's easy to get in 4 companies. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but that could be 12 companies in this building, and that's the part of the industrial arts area that's pretty cool. This might be a home for one large tenant on one floor. It might be a home for 4 kind of incubator-sized tenants that are trying to develop something new, which is cool. We want to make sure that there's room in this building to serve both of those outcomes, because I think that's the best way for us to bridge the nature of the Eastside Innovation Zone and the industrial arts area. Shannon walked you through these buildings. The one thing I would say that's a little bit different here, in the left, you see a nicely colored kind of light tone brick. We're upgrading this to limestone. As we speak, we've been talking with Shannon and staff about making a change to that. Just unfortunately, the renderings haven't quite caught up to our appetite for our cladding material, but this is an upgrade from brick to stone. We hope you would agree. But it really shows the welcoming nature of that courtyard. Now, one thing I'll say is that these night renderings are there to kind of be evocative and prove a point, but, this will meet every Title 24 requirement for occupancy sensors in any of the spaces. We will only have an outdoor in the evening time when the building is not occupied. We will only have the light that's required by code to provide safe, accessible access to and from the building, so this is not intended to be a beacon. But it does make for a nice rendering to kind of prove the transparency of the building, as is our medium, Commissioner Ruff. So it would be nice if it was there. We'd support it if you all want to do it. This just gives a sense of the sort of two sides but single building nature of this. We want this to look broken down and part of a grain of the industrial arts area, but it's also a large building, so we want it to hang together with common ideas, but it's really intended to have a couple of personalities here that we think add some richness. We think the materials palette, as Mike said, I'm fortunate enough to work with Mike and his phenomenal team doing great buildings all over the place in the Bay Area, and we'd like to make them out of things that you like to see in nature: wood, stone, glass, metal, terracotta, rain screens, and sunshades. This is a really warm and vibrant way to build buildings that last in a timely way. A little typo on this slide. There are 17 existing on-site trees. They are being removed. None of them are heritage trees. We will plant back all 17 plus one as street trees, and then easily be able to get up to the total of 36 between perimeter planting and planting at the interior of the courtyard. A zoom in on the public plaza just gives you the evocative view of where the sort of ideas are coming from, and our friends at Mansell Landscape Architecture are here if you have any specific questions about this, but we really love this sort of wonderful idea of how the sloughs of the bay bring in and create the landscape patterning and paving here in the courtyard too, and give some real interesting kind of counterpoints in the sort of circular forms and geometries up against something that's a little more rigid, set up for science. The palette of materials in the courtyard and the building's periphery are going to match and dovetail really nicely with the architectural proposition. The sustainability framework, we certainly, forgive us if we filled out the REACH code forms incorrectly. We have no problem at all getting to 2 kilowatts per square foot on the roof. I think even when we do the final technical drawings of the mechanical equipment, that shouldn't be an issue. But for sure, if it is, depending on who's the tenant ultimately, we're going to do as much as we can. No problem meeting EV parking spaces day one and providing the conduit for, call it day two, for expanded EV parking as well. What I'll say is that we've taken a lot of care in the articulation of the buildings to deal with a few things that I think are important. There's a lot of really nice recesses and overhangs in this building which control sun. There's componentry in the glazing systems with these shade fins and so forth, and perimeter exterior insulation that allows us to really do a good job of energy management. And one thing that's really unique, I think, that we really like, you see if that thing that says lab bench on there, we've purposefully given the circulation around the bench zone at the perimeter of the building, which does two wonderful things. It controls the impact of radiant heat from the glass towards the work surface where someone's working, and then it also eliminates the impact of glare on their desktop too, by providing that extra distance. That's not what necessarily was in vogue for a tech office before the pandemic, but it's what makes sense for a science building. And lastly, real fast, parking. So we ask your indulgence to understand what we're trying to accomplish here. We only want to provide the parking that's required. You can understand that we're in a pickle with not knowing who the ultimate user of the building will be and what their requirements might be. This might be a mix of life science tenants. It might be a mix of some office tenants as well. We don't really know, but what we do think is that with a tandem parking space strategy, which can function fine as highlighted in blue as single stalls in the case of this being a 50-50 lab office split, works just fine for us. And then if it gets to the point where there's more of a balance of office in the building than there is life science tenancies in the building, then we have capacity through valet operations, because you can imagine the operational headache of, you know, co-workers on different floors parking one behind each other. We would need to enlist a valet company to help us with that. That would be something we would do in the event that that's what the tenancy requires. So what we're trying to do is give enough for one eventuality, but welcome in the ability to do the other as well. So not trying to be overreaching, and we think that the tandem strategy, because it's going to be decidedly very inconvenient to use sort of your free will day to day, that it would require a valet operations person to help us. So that explains a little bit where we're trying to get to from the parking calculation standpoint. So I hope you can kind of see that the mix ultimately, which we don't know yet, and the changing market conditions we face may dictate a different outcome. So anyway, that's all I have. I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Before we move to public comment, fellow commissioners, any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Roof.
I just wanted to clarify. I'd like to clarify for the parking, the table in the staff report says 425 parking stalls. Is that, I didn't see that number. This says 417. Is that just a?
So we've been having really productive semi-monthly calls with Shannon and planning staff. The project has evolved a little bit as we've moved through. So what's on the screen right now represents this is where we are today, and what's in the staff report is what was in the application. So things have evolved just a little bit. But we've got 417 parking spaces shown here, not 425, based on our calculations. And if you net out the valet parking spaces, that's where the 324 single car stalls come from, if that makes sense. So really close to what's based on the application, but there's just been a little evolution as we've moved forward over these last few weeks, if that makes sense. Did I answer that right, Shannon? Yeah. Okay, great.
So what maybe this is a question for staff. What we're approving is what's shown in the staff report or what's on these slides? I'd be a little confused.
So, that's a great question. So one of the conditions of approval, it's either the first or second, says as per the plan set dated February 1st, which is the plan set that's attached. So that's really what you're approving, is the plan set that's attached. If there's some revision that you're seeing this evening, be it revisions that come out of discussions with the planning commissioners or presentation from the applicant team, the conditions of approval could be modified, as per the presentation, that there shall not be more than 417 parking spaces. So it's sort of a long-winded yes. It will be what you decide you are approving, and we'll make sure it's reflected accurately in the conditions of approval so that when staff picks it up in 6 months with the building permits, we're making sure we're tracking the right piece.
And if I could just add to that from a parking perspective, we're really focused on, are they meeting the parking minimums as established in the code? And so at time of building permit stage, we're going to compare the plans that you approved, if you do so, this evening to the building permit set. And sometimes there's a little shift, right? Some structural element needed to go in that they didn't anticipate before, and that might reduce or modify the parking. So there is the ability for staff at a later date to even approve a parking reduction beyond what you're looking at, as long as it meets our code minimum and it's in substantial conformance with the plans you're looking at. So there could be some further reductions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair Iacopone. Building on Commissioner Roof's comment about parking, the city does try to right-size parking for any new development. I don't have the packet open in front of me. When you were 50-50 lab commercial, you had a lot of extra parking. But to your point, the architect, Bob, if you went with 75%, 25, I thought I remembered reading in the packet, you still had extra parking spaces, but what I haven't factored in is this latest update that brought the number down. So I'm really curious when, oh, here we are. If you come down to 417 and you're at 75, 25, do you still have excess parking spaces?
We would be using the assistance of a valet operator to achieve those stalls. You can get 324 stalls, single occupancy or carpool vehicles pulling in and parking without any encumbrance or extra navigation. But to provide 417, we would need to be enlisting the services of a valet operator, which we've done effectively in other projects when it's necessitated it. But that's something we would do if the need arose. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. And I would be supportive of the 417, the lower number for parking. Thank you.
And to clarify, the code does permit tandem parking. It does not require use of valet.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Clements, anything at this time? Questions, I think right now, just for clarifying before we move to the public?
That was actually my question.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Why don't we, Commissioner Garvey?
One additional question on the Transportation Demand Management Plan. This is about scooters. Scooters aren't covered anywhere in the Transportation Management Plan, and they're not a requirement. But I saw a press release 5 or 6 days ago, and the city of Redwood City partnered with a company and now has electric scooters available in certain locations in Redwood City. I'm wondering if these scooters prove successful in Redwood City, your facility is a mile from the train station. People could walk it, but if they had an electric scooter, and they were young enough, younger than me, they'd get on that scooter maybe and go to work. I'm wondering if you would be open to amending your Transportation Demand Management Plan at some point in the future. If scooters become viable, might they be incorporated in something that your company might be able to offer? I see in the TDM plan bicycle parking. You'd have to find a place at your facility to park electric scooters. And if people were able to take those electric scooters to work, it stands to reason that they could get on them again at lunchtime and come down to Laurel Street and buy a sandwich. So I'm just putting it on your radar screen. I hadn't thought about scooters for this project until I saw this press release and what Redwood City is doing. And I'm not going to mandate it for this project. I'm just putting it on everybody's radar screen that if it works in Redwood City, I guess I'd encourage you to think about whether or not it works also as a part of your project. And I don't know if that means you need to design in a little space to park them, or if they could just go, somewhere you've already got a spot.
I think it's a great idea. Bird is somewhat of a four-letter word to some cities, so pun intended. We got plenty of room, both at the bicycle parking area in and around where the drop-off is by the plaza. I mean, we're certainly open to it. And if there's any policy that, comes out at the city level, happy to, consider that, participate. We think anybody getting to work in another way besides the car is a good way. So we're definitely happy.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
And through the chair, if I could just add, for the TDM plans, they are reviewed after the first year of occupancy, and then I believe it's 5 years after that. So there is also the opportunity, for staff to keep that in mind and bring it up at the future reviews as well.
Thank you, Andrea. That's great. And I think in the horizon between now and first occupant, I would imagine we'll have some data from Redwood City. So look forward to seeing how that works. Great. Thank you, everyone.
I had one more clarifying.
Please, Commissioner Roof.
Quick clarifying question. How many people do you think would be on site, the maximum?
Good question. I would assume 3 or 4 people per 1,000 feet. So talking about 500 or 600 people in the building total. So the good thing about these life science buildings is the same worker that's in the lab is going back into the lab support, or what we're calling office space. And so there's a duplicity of build out relative to number of employees. So they tend to be lower density when you compare them to office building.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. I think at this time we'll open it for public comment. We have, I have a number of speaker cards, and I'll take them in order and would invite the speakers to come on up, and you have 2 minutes. Sorry, let me put my glasses on. I'll not poke myself in the eye with my pen. Richard Armanino. Come on up.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Richard Armanino. I'm the president of the Parks and Rec Foundation of San Carlos. Our foundation's role is to fund capital improvements to our parks and provide scholarship assistance for park programs. I'm here to speak in support of the project at 1021 Howard Avenue and to ensure you that you're aware of the community commitment and generosity of the applicant, Premier Capital and Prince Street Partners have gone above and beyond to support our parks, our city's parks and youth programs and sports with their generous and financial donation and resources, which were able to completely renovate our aging batting cages at Burton Park. We cut the ribbon earlier this year with many of our city council members and mayor. This has made and provided a safe playing experience for our youth athletes in our community. We're fortunate to have such an engaged and dedicated developer team building quality commercial projects in San Carlos. So I hope you'll approve their project without delay, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate your comments. Next is Jay Stralis. Jay, can you come on up?
There's Jay Strauss. I'm the president of the board of Healthy Cities Tutoring here in San Carlos, where we serve over 500 students with approximately 400 volunteer tutors and a small staff in San Carlos and Redwood City, and we just celebrated our 25th anniversary. Speaking on behalf of the benefits we've received in that partnership with Prince Street and Premia, they've donated to us, which helps fund our programs to expand. Certainly during these times, tutoring is in greater need than ever as we move hopefully out of the pandemic, and we've had to move from a hybrid model and hopefully all back in person. And so the generosity of partnerships like Prince Street and Premia are very important to us as a nonprofit organization, and so we like to support their project, and it looks like a great addition, and I'm a longtime San Carlos resident since 1979. It looks beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Appreciate your comments. Our next speaker card is Debbie Denton.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Debbie Denton, and I'm also on the Parks and Rec Foundation and on the Healthy Cities Tutoring Board of Directors, and I've held a bunch of volunteer roles in San Carlos over the years. Premia Capital and Prince Street Partners have been so generous and enthusiastic in offering their long-term support for community programs and organizations. They care about our community and go out of their way to forge relationships, not just write checks. So I hope you'll approve their project at 1021 Howard, and I know they'll be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next speaker card here is for Mr. Don Eaton. Don, come on up.
Seems like old home week. I remember sitting on this very commission for 9 years in the 80s. Some of you weren't born yet, I'm sure. About 20 years ago, plus or minus, the then city council, I think I was the mayor one of those times, elected to upgrade the infrastructure in what we then called the industrial district, or the industrial area of town, recognizing that it had huge potential, recognizing that things would change from a lot of mom and pop businesses just because things change over time. We realized the strategic location of San Carlos on the peninsula and knew that it would change. So we elected to go into a project where we upgraded the infrastructure, much of which is on Industrial Road, but also on other things, other streets. The utilities, the street lights, the landscaping, in anticipation of a project just like this and others that you have seen before you in the past and will see in the future too. This is a project that has a very good location. As Commissioner Garvey, I think, said, it's just a mile from the train station, or was it Commissioner Clements? I can't remember which one of you. But it's easy to get to. It's convenient to downtown, convenient to some other little retail that's over in the what I'll call the TJ Maxx Center, for lack of a better word. It's a well-located project. It's a great transition. It's only 3 stories tall. It's not trying to be some of the things that Alexandria is trying to do a little farther to the north. It's a great transition into the industrial arts area besides that. It's well designed. It's attractive. It is, certainly well parked in anticipation of a variety of uses that way. You have an experienced developer who has been before you before and has partially completed another building that's going to be another attractive addition to San Carlos. So it's got a lot of things going for it. It's following all the city codes. It's doing, as Mike Callow mentioned, it's doing things the right way. These guys, and I am familiar with them, they do quality buildings, and they have for their existence. So to that end, I would encourage you to improve all that is before you, whether it's the grading and dirt hall permit, the transportation permit, whatever else it is here, the design review, because it's attractive. And I'd leave that with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Don. Okay, and we have one more speaker card here. Linda Churchill. You want to?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Hard to follow Don because he has so much history. But my name is Linda Tuchel, and I've been a San Carlos resident for 50 years. I've been involved in our community in many different ways, on the school board, chair of Hometown Days, director of the Girl Scout camp for 35 years. Andrea was one of my happy campers. There have been a lot of changes in our town, and I welcome them. I often attend the developer community outreach events, including the recent event that they spoke of this evening. They're clearly engaged and committed to doing good things for San Carlos, beyond the improvements on the East Side neighborhood in which they're building. I hope you'll support their efforts. By approving their project, we will all benefit by having them in town, and as good neighbors, as Debbie said. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. And actually, we do have one more, and Karen Molinari.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Karen Molinari, Healthy Cities Tutoring. I'm here to lend my support also to 1021 Howard Avenue. As Executive Director of the nonprofit that Jay and Debbie spoke to, we greatly appreciate Premia and Prince Street's support of our organization. But I just want to mention Mike's absolutely passion to engage the community in innovative and problem-solving ways. I was at the community outreach event for this project where the East Side residents and businesses lamented about the loss of tradespeople, and that they were upset about the fact that the East Side was turning from an industrial into a professional office space. And, instead of being a developer saying, well, this is just the way it is, right, this is the future, Michael really pulled them aside, started to have a conversation with them, engaged a group of us in a brainstorming of how can I solve this problem? How can I be a part of taking care of this community and continuing, to offer the services that are so important here, and for his own business as well. So from there, we brainstormed. We came up with introducing Michael and his team to the Sequoia Union High School District's career development team and their shop teacher and the principal at Redwood High School. And Michael went out there, toured around, learned about the program and ways that his organization and business could support them. This is not just a developer writing a check. This is somebody who is showing up, who is committed to making a difference and making our community better. And I greatly, greatly respect that. As an organization who gets a lot of people who just wants to write checks, I'd rather work with somebody who wants to improve our community from the ground up. I really hope that you'll approve this project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Karen. Let's switch over to the phone lines. If there are any folks on the phone, Lynette, are there any people who have joined with hands raised?
Yes, we have one. Tara Fuller.
Great. Good evening, Tara. Welcome.
Great. Thank you so much. So I am Tara Fuller, and I'm the Executive Director of Art Bias, a nonprofit arts community right just a block away from the Industrial Arts District in San Carlos. For those of you who are not aware of Art Bias, we provide resources for local artists and are the largest artist community on the peninsula with 50 artist studios under our roof. Premia Capital and Prince Street Partners have very generously supported our Artisan Power Fund, and this enables us to offer more resources for local artists. And so we are really very grateful for their support, and we look forward to continue engaging with them in the future. So thank you so much for considering my comments.
Thank you very much, Tara. Thanks for taking the time this evening. Lynette, one more check. Anyone else on the line?
There's no one else.
Great, thank you. Council, Commission, I'd welcome a motion to close public comment period.
I move that we close public comment period.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clemens?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Okay, very good. So, colleagues, thoughts? We have a discussion period, I think, before we consider the motion that's before us. So, happy to have your input and reflections on this project. Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair Iacoponi. I like this project, and the quality of the materials, the quality of the design is just wonderful. It's a beautiful building. It's really well thought out. One of the things I really like about the project is that they thought about where they were in our community, and they took the vision for the East Side Vision Plan, and they took the vision for the Industrial Arts District into consideration. And I think that comes through when you look at the height of the building. I think there was a speaker who talked about a transitional height of 3 stories. And in that location, that seems to me to be the perfect height. I had a question earlier about rainwater, and I had not seen or not remembered the bioretention planters, which I think gets to that issue that I raised. So I was really pleased to hear that from, I think it was one of the speakers. And we talked about parking, which was important to me, and I would support the project with the 417 parking spaces that were discussed earlier. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Let's see. I think Commissioner Roof, you were next.
Oh, thank you, Chair Iacoponi. I also appreciated the height, and think that putting the parking underground is a pretty good way to keep that out of the way. I guess I want the Planning Commission to look at the plan. The building goes to a 10-foot setback for the lot all around, and so that meets the minimum setback requirements. The pictures kind of, I think this is a necessity in order to be able to see the front of the building. It kind of looks like there's a campus-like surrounding for it, but in fact the building goes right up to the curb almost, and so it maximizes the floor area for the lot size, I think, nearly, and I think it looks okay, but it is going to be a big box tightly on the lot, and so we should take that into consideration if that's compatible with the surrounding environment. I know on the other side of Howard Street is the Lucky grocery store, which also is right on the edge of the property line, probably 5 or 10 feet, and it's just kind of a wall. And so now we'll have kind of 2 walls on either side of Howard Street that are pretty close together. So it's kind of a concern for me, but I don't know that it's a deal killer for me personally, because many other attributes of the building are so positive. But I wanted us to kind of be cognizant of that in our deliberations. It's unlike some of the Alexandria and stuff where they have a little more space and height to be working with. It's more of a campus-like atmosphere. Well, this is a big box on the lot.
And thank you for that comment, well, your comments in general, but that one as well. I appreciate that. Commissioner Clements.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there are so many things to like about the project. I do think it's a better use of the site than what is there now, and I do appreciate, obviously, the developer's sensitivity to businesses and their retention in the area. I appreciate the drought. So here are the things I'd like to support about it. Drought-tolerant plantings. I'm glad that you pointed out that bioretention planters. I think recycled water at this point in our history is important. I really, really like the exterior materials that were shown by the architect. It's beautiful and really nice choices. I'm excited about the limestone upgrade as well. And the pieces of it that is for the community, the access to the cafe and the maker spaces, I think are all attributes that, as long as the people, the businesses leasing the space can't change those aspects to it. I'm very excited about that as being a positive addition to the community from the building. I'm not concerned about the small setbacks because the width of that road is very wide right there at Lucky's. And, you know, I think that is not a very small kind of space that deserves kind of a smaller frame building. I also think the transparency of the materials and the building design not being one solid block really helps make it feel more transparent and not quite as blocky as one solid thing of, you know, opaque material would be. So I think that they've accommodated that. You know, made up for going to the 10-foot setback really well with the design and the materials. So I didn't have a similar reaction there. And two more things. I would also support a higher number of parking spaces. I appreciate, per the commissioner's comment, I appreciate the focus on bikes as well. And scooters, because I did see the first couple of bird scooters just on the sidewalk somewhere the other day, and I was shocked that Little San Carlos has bird scooters now. So I think they're coming any second now, and I do think they can be disruptive, so I'm glad that you're thinking about, you know, how the site might accommodate that better. And then finally, I'm overwhelmed with the outpouring of support from the community and, you know, the developers' really devotion to our community. And I know we're talking about dirt hauling and design here, but the fact that people actually showed up to speak in your favor, I think is pretty unusual. So I think it speaks to, it reflects back on your involvement and your engagement with people here in the community, and it's frankly very heartwarming and very exciting to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clements. Maybe just a couple things for me very quickly. But first, I agree with the sentiment about this being, let's say, the first anchor in a brand new development area and setting the bar quite high in terms of aesthetic, visual, also public space, also retail and cafe, therefore making it really a part of the community rather than what it could be otherwise, which would be a functional space box plunked down. And so I think it's a very good first bar, and if we ask future development to meet and go over that one, I think we're off to a good start in this part. I also appreciate the idea that it is considering street plantings and other things that are consistent with our East Side Vision Plan, 10 Big Moves, and also the connection with the Allied Arts, and of course the community support. And I think regarding, I appreciate your comment on setback. My reaction also was that If there were less window and more wall, I would feel edgier about it, but I think with that amount of glass, and particularly since the Howard side is north and I'll hope less blind-oriented, so to speak, it'll feel softer. That's what I would say. So, but appreciate you raising it. And so, you know, for my part, as far as the project goes, the design aesthetic, I would be in support. Can I clarify, there was I think Commissioner Garvey suggested approving at 417 parking spaces, which is different than the packet. And I'm not sure, Commissioner Clements, where you were shaking out on that specific number. Just
Actually, that's a good point.
maybe Commissioner Roof as well. I think 417 was the math at 522 times 0.8, if I recall.
Yeah, the staff report said...
Staff report says 425. Slide said 417. With assistance, right, with valet.
Yeah.
I was trying to actually support a lower, what am I trying to say? A lower number of parking spaces. Higher bike, lower car.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
And so if someone were to propose an amendment or in the motion 417, would that be all right? Okay. Well, no problem. So I would say for my part, I'd be willing to entertain a motion regarding this project.
I had another...
Oh, sorry, please, go ahead. No.
Should I go?
Yep.
Oh, okay. We always have to be careful to view the impact of a new development that's pretty substantial, 500 or 600 people working in the city compared to probably a tenth of that on the land there now. So the transportation management plan, I think, is critical for ensuring that the impact is not adverse on the community. And as planning commissioners, I think we're all pretty familiar with that, and we're sort of relying on it. But I take it very seriously that they have the review after, I forget whether it's 1 or 2 years, and make sure that it's working and that those provisions truly be implemented, I think is critical, so that we don't end up with a massive massive traffic jam in the city every morning and evening. And 417 seems like a reasonable number to me. I'm never sure whether I want more parking spots to avoid overflow consequences or less parking spots to encourage people to use alternate modes. But I think 417 seems like it's in a sweet spot for me, so I agree with that.
Thank you.
And let me say, just to echo the comments of the other commissioners regarding the community outreach and support, that is really great to see, and that has an impact on my thinking for the project. It's a good thing. To have a community here, to have industry be paying attention to the local community is so admirable. That's all I have.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Garvey, please.
Thank you, Chair Iacopone. Two additional comments that were on my list that I didn't talk about. One of them was lighting. You know, we spend a lot of time at the Planning Commission talking about people that have lit billboards and not wanting so much light, you know, from midnight to 5 in the morning. And I appreciated the comment from the architect that even though the rendering is taken in the dark for illustration purposes, it is very well lit, that in the middle of the night, it's not going to be a large building that's blaring light. It's going to be tastefully, dimly lit with whatever the code lighting is for the exterior. So that is important to me, and I'm glad that's happening. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was about sea level resiliency. This building is going 2 to 4 feet higher, much like its counterpart a half a mile away. So I appreciate that the company took the specific location of the building involved and the terrain, which is flat, very near the bay, and began to think about how to design around that in the event of flooding. And so it is 2 to 4 feet above grade. So I wanted to call that out. I really appreciated that design element. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Other thoughts to check in? Okay, great. Do we have a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission grant approval for design review, grading, and dirt haul and transportation demand management plan for the development of a new 190,027 square foot research and development building at 1021 Howard Avenue, APNs 046-191-070, 080, and 020, for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and with the conditions in the code compliance certificate as modified by our comments on parking spaces of 417. Yeah.
I was going to wait for the second to clarify the condition.
I'll second that.
So just clarification that the condition you would like to add is that the parking be a maximum of 417 on-site spaces. Correct. Maximum. Correct.
Yes.
Not a minimum.
No.
Maximum.
Maximum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clemens?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you to the applicant. Congratulations. We appreciate both the development and your investment in the community, and to all those who came to speak on your behalf tonight. Thank you for your comments. Congratulations.
Thank you. And may I also say I'm excited about the batting cages. I had no idea how that happened. Thank you.
That's quite all right. Good. Our next item on the agenda, item number 7, reports, correspondence, and general information. Staff?
So item 7A, report on recent City Council actions. Council has been on recess for the month of July, but at your last meeting in June, they did adopt the updated BMR ordinance as well as the updated ADU ordinance. And their next meeting is August 8th, in a week.
Can I ask a question of Andrea? Were there any changes to the BMR ordinance from what was proposed to us?
I would have to look and report back. I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'd be interested in that
Absolutely.
as a report back. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Do any of the planning commissioners have comments or anything to report on? Okay, very good. Is there any correspondence this evening?
No additional correspondence.
Okay, very good. And last, planning staff, comments, reports, or any updates to current projects that you'd like to share this evening?
Sure. I wanted to start with just a quick overview of an email that Lisa Porras, the Advanced Planning Manager, sent to Commission about updating, upcoming items. Wanted to highlight the consideration of establishing some Planning Commission subcommittees to help with review of some of the long-range plans as a check-in point prior to coming to Planning Commission study sessions. And so Lisa had asked if you do have any questions or scheduling conflicts or ideas of which committee you might be interested in, just to let her know. We also have the SB 9 ordinance tentatively scheduled for September 6th, and the housing element update study session scheduled for September 19th. I did want to point out that on the email that was sent to you, it was indicated that 808 Alameda de las Pulgas would be coming before you, and we have the project planner here so she can provide an update for that.
Sure. So we're still working on some last-minute issues relating to the draft EIR, and so we don't want to release it until those are resolved. I would expect them to be resolved in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then a little bit of time to refresh the draft EIR to accommodate that. So that could be released in, say, 4 to 6 weeks. Once it's released, we would like to have a hearing with the Planning Commission to take additional public comment on the draft EIR. So it will not occur on your August 15th meeting. It would likely be, I guess, a later September hearing.
Very good. Thank you for that update.
And then finally, I'd just like to formally welcome Connor Highland, our new Deputy City Attorney.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Connor. Thank you very much. One last check. Commissioner Garvey, please.
So is there a Planning Commission meeting on August 15th? Do we have material?
For right now, there is one scheduled, and the only item so far is the subcommittees. So I'll follow up with Lisa Porras and see if that's something she wants to keep for that.
Very good. Thank you. We'll keep us posted. Yes.
May I ask another question? It sounds like 808 Alameda is a well-known development proposal, and I'm wondering if someone probably preceded my time on the commission, and I'm wondering how I could find the history of that easily. If somebody could send me a date, I could look up the meeting.
Have we taken it to the commission? I'm just trying to remember if it's come before the Planning Commission before. There might have been the scoping hearing. But I do have the information on the development page, the project web page.
Oh, okay.
But I can also email you that scoping hearing.
Oh, thank you.
And then I think that's been it, but it has been in for quite a bit, and I can always chat with you if you'd like. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And I was just checking with Commissioner Roof. I think we both recall an evening where the developers for 808 Alameda did present to the Planning Commission and maybe even take, was it a study session, and we took public comment that evening? Because I think there was, yeah, we did, because there was a lot of energy in the room.
Yeah, and the project has evolved a bit since then, so if you review the tape from that meeting and then also look at the project website, you'll see the revised plans.
I think it was pre-pandemic, so it's been a while.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Was there pre-pandemic? I had just one more question. The housing element study session that's planned, is that to review a draft, or is it pre-release of the draft? And I'm sorry if I should know if you've released or not.
No, so it is a review of the draft element. I believe, I'm forgetting off the top of my head when that's supposed to be released. We're reviewing the draft policies now, and the draft element should come very shortly. But that will be the actual draft element for review. And then it will subsequently go to City Council for a study session prior to sending to HCD for review for the first time.
Very good. And I think with that, our meeting is adjourned.